My son said, "Mom, pack your bags. You're moving out today. You just have 1 hour left." He didn't know I'd already changed everything yesterday. I had just folded the last piece of laundry when Avery walked in, her steps sharp enough to cut the air. She didn't look at me. She looked at the basket in my hands as if my touch contaminated it. Then, without a word, she slammed her palm against the edge and sent the entire load crashing to the floor. Socks, shirts, towels, everything scattered like debris after an explosion. She pointed at me with a cold, triumphant smile. "Pack your bags. Today you're moving out. You have 1 hour, May." Before I could even process her words, Luke stepped behind her, arms crossed, eyes flat and distant, the way his fathers never were. "Where we're going," he said, letting out a low, dismissive snort. "A grave for leeches like you." My breath stuttered, but I stayed still. I had survived worse storms, yet his words carried something final, something practiced, something he wanted to say for a long time. Avery leaned in, her voice dripping with contempt. "You've leeched off us long enough." She waved her hand in front of her face dramatically. "And that old person smell of yours sticks to everything. It's depressing." Luke added, "You make life slower for everyone. Even the kids avoid you. You drag the whole house down with that limp of yours." None of it was true, but lies told with confidence have a way of sounding real. Avery stepped around me, kicking one of Luke's shirts out of her path. "Honestly, May, you're lucky we kept you this long. Some people know when to leave before they ruin everything. You cling like a barnacle." My hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from disbelief at how easily cruelty flowed from their mouths. And before I continue, let me say this gently. If you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. Avery's hatred for me had never come from anything I actually did. It sprouted from places so petty and so irrational that I sometimes wondered whether she simply needed an enemy and chose me because I was the easiest target in the house. She never forgave me for refusing to lend her money years ago. She wanted a new car, sleek, expensive, something to post online, but her credit was already cracked from impulsive spending. When I told her gently that I couldn't risk my savings, she exploded, claiming I had ruined her life and her plans. Another time, she posted a suggestive video of her daughter on TikTok. I told her carefully that the internet wasn't always kind to children. She spun around and accused me of shaming her motherhood. From that moment on, she said I judged every breath she took. And deep down, she hated that her daughter preferred sitting with me, sewing scraps or listening to stories, instead of following her around the house. But the biggest wound? The house. My house. When Avery discovered every deed, tax record, and mortgage paper was in my name, and that Luke had no automatic claim to it, she looked at me as if I were an obstacle to her future. From that moment, her resentment grew teeth. I tried to stay useful anyway. I had spent my life doing that. I worked decades as a seamstress in a hospital, fixing uniforms, making small blankets for newborns, repairing tears in scrubs that doctors tore running between emergencies. Every holiday, I sewed Luke a gift by hand: shirts, scarves, pillowcases with his initials. When he went to college, I sold my sewing machine and even my wedding ring to help pay his tuition. I never once told him what it cost me. Then the accident happened, a fracture in my hip that stole my speed but not my will. I still folded clothes, washed vegetables, and wiped counters. But to Avery, the moment I slowed down, I became a burden. To Luke, I became an inconvenience he didn't have the courage to defend. Avery didn't even hide how she manipulated him. One night, while she thought I was asleep, I heard her hiss, "If you let your mother stay here 1 more month, I swear I'll take my daughter and go home to my mother. Choose, Luke." Of course he chose her. Fear does strange things to a man who's built his identity around keeping the peace. He didn't protect me. He protected himself from losing the family he pretended was perfect. Still, the cruelest blow wasn't directed at me but at the children. Avery told them not to hug me too long because Grandma is fragile and confused. She whispered that I was sick, that I smelled old, that being around me would make them sad. I watched Chloe, sweet Chloe, hesitate before running into my arms, and that hesitation cut deeper than any insult. Then came the moment that anchored everything. I was heading toward the kitchen when I heard Avery's voice from the living room, sharp and urgent, as she spoke into her phone. "Last week already set everything in motion," she whispered. "She won't be here long." I froze. My breath caught. My mind raced. Last week, something happened. Something they hadn't told me. Something they believed would push me out of this house forever. And as I stood there, listening to Avery plot my disappearance as easily as one might plan a grocery list, I felt a strange calm settle inside me, not resignation, but clarity. Whatever they had done last week, I would find out. And when I did, nothing in this house would ever be the same again. It started small, too small for anyone but a woman like me, who had learned to survive by noticing the slightest shift in the air. Luke suddenly insisted on being the only one with the mailbox key. He dangled it on his key ring as if it were nothing, but he never let it leave his sight. "It's easier if I grab the mail on my way in," he said, avoiding my eyes the same way guilty men sometimes avoid mirrors. Every evening, he brought in a stack of envelopes, but whenever I reached for the ones addressed to me, Avery swooped in with that bright, poisonous voice of hers. "Old people forget to check the mail, May. Let me help you." She stressed the word help, like it was a threat, wearing a smile. The first real sting came the afternoon I found a folded piece of paper tucked between towels in the hallway cabinet. A credit card statement. My name on it, a charge for $900 from a jewelry store I had never walked into. For a moment I wondered if the company had made a mistake, but when I brought it to Avery, she laughed with a pitying shake of her head. "Maybe you bought something and forgot, May. Dementia starts exactly like that." Then she tapped her temple. Hard, deliberate. Luke did not even lift his head from his phone. Something in my chest tightened, not fear, not yet more like the first cold hint of something approaching. A few days later, as I carried leftovers out to the outside freezer, I heard noises from the garage. Sharp, metallic scraping, the sound of paper shifting, a short burst from a drill. Then silence. Then Avery's warning whisper. "Not now. She's coming." I froze with my hand on the freezer handle. When I stepped toward the garage, the door slammed shut, locked. Again. My own garage, the one I paid for, suddenly off limits. The next week, Avery began a different kind of campaign. Not against my belongings this time, but against my reputation, my mind. She made sure every friend who visited heard the same lines. "She drains the energy out of a room," she'd say loudly while pretending to fold laundry. "She walks slowly on purpose so people will feel sorry for her. And the worst? She's fading. And it's sad. But what can we do?" All lies. All delivered with practiced sympathy. Gaslighting dressed as concern. But none of those moments cut as deeply as what happened one night around 1:40 a.m. I had gotten up for water, moving quietly down the hallway. As I passed Luke's office, I heard his voice soft, tender, nothing like the clipped tone he used with me. "I love you," he whispered. "I promise I'll fix the house situation soon. Trust me, Marla." The name hit me like a slap. Another woman. A woman he loved. And the house situation? My house. The house I had spent my life protecting. I stepped back from the door as if the wood had burned me. I suddenly understood why Avery's hostility had escalated, why Luke's eyes never met mine, why everything in this house felt fragile, temporary, already slipping through my fingers. They needed money, and they had decided I was their easiest source. The next morning, while retrieving a dropped dish towel near the utility closet, I shifted a plastic storage bin, and the lid fell open. Dozens of sheets slid out. My breath caught, each page held shaky, slanted versions of my own signature. Loop after loop, stroke after stroke. My name, repeated again and again by someone learning to imitate my handwriting. My legs gave out for a moment, and I knelt, ignoring the pain in my hip as I lifted the papers one by one. This wasn't a random scribble. It was practice. Careful, intentional practice. I touched one of the crooked signatures. It looked wrong, but wrong in a way that revealed effort, someone studying the curves of my R the angle of my why. Someone preparing. My hands shook slightly as I gathered the papers. A hot, silent dread spread through my stomach. They were building something. Something that required my name. Something I would never willingly sign. That evening, as I sat alone in my room, staring at the wall, I felt the truth creeping toward me from all directions. Missing mail, strange charges, locked doors, whispered conversations, lies spoken casually. Luke's confession to a woman named Marla, and now pages of forged signatures. Avery's words from last week echoed in my mind. It's already in motion. She won't be here long. My throat tightened. They were preparing paperwork, legal paperwork about me. I whispered to myself, barely breathing. What documents are they preparing? And what do they plan to do with my name? The question chilled me. But the answer would be worse. I had never touched Luke's old laptop since he moved most of his life onto his phone, but something in me, a quiet instinct, sharpened by years of being ignored, pulled me toward it. I found it high on the closet shelf, coated with dust, as if he assumed I would never notice it was there. The moment the screen lit up, my own reflection stared back at me, pale and tense, as though bracing for a truth that had already begun to break through. After a few wrong guesses, I typed, Chloe. It opened immediately. A small, painful detail. He trusted his daughter's name more than any password he could invent. I went straight to the deleted files. The first one stunned me so completely that I forgot to breathe. A photo. Luke, smiling brighter than I had seen in years, holding a curly-haired toddler who clung to his leg with the certainty of a child who believed she belonged there. Beside him stood a woman, Marla, with her hand resting on his back, like it had rested there a long time. In the corner, written in glittery purple marker, Daddy Luke and us. Us. A family. Not this family. Not the one under my roof. A second life he built in the shadows. Not the wife he pretended to cherish. A secret one he was paying for with pieces of my life. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to scroll. More messages appeared, small wounds delivered in cold text. Did you tell your wife about selling your mom's house? We need the money. I felt the words land like stones. This was what Avery meant when she said everything was already in motion. Luke had promised to sell my home in 2 months. Not for his children, not for emergencies, but to fund a life with a woman who kept calling him Daddy in glitter pens. Rage did not rise. Something colder did. A clarity that made my fingertips tremble. And now, if you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. I clicked on another file, a scanned document, torn in half, before being deleted. I dragged one piece into place, then another. Slowly, the shape emerged. A real estate contract. My house listed for sale, and where my signature should have been. A slanted imitation that matched the loops I had seen in the garage. 80% accurate. Enough to fool anyone who did not know my handwriting by heart. I pressed a hand to my mouth, trying to steady the tremor in it. Then I saw a short, handwritten note in another folder. Cognitive test appointment needed before POA signing. Power of attorney. They were setting the stage to declare me incompetent. They wanted to take my decisions, my property, my identity, and package it neatly into a legal justification that would make their betrayal seem reasonable. But that was not the worst discovery. I noticed a new folder syncing from the cloud one Luke must have forgotten existed. He had installed the camera months earlier, paranoid about snacks disappearing. But like most careless men who believe they own the world, he never bothered to check the backup settings again. The cloud kept everything faithfully, silently long after he forgot it existed. It bore the name of a security app he had once installed because he claimed I stole snacks at night. I had laughed at the accusation then, thinking it petty. I did not know the camera had been recording the entire time. I opened the file. A video played. Avery stood in the kitchen, pulling my medication bottle out of the cabinet. She placed it deliberately on the top shelf, far too high for me to reach, without straining my injured hip. She needs to struggle, Avery muttered. It makes her look confused. The video cut to the living room. Luke jerked Avery's son by the arm so hard the boy nearly fell. "Stop defending that old hag," he snapped. The child cried, and Luke raised his hand again before Avery stepped in, not out of concern, but annoyance. "Do not leave marks," she hissed. "Not until after she's out." My breath went shallow. I clicked another clip. This time, Avery's voice was smooth, calculated, as she whispered to Luke, "Just break her mentally. Then she'll sign anything. Anything. Like a power of attorney, like a house sale, like a document meant to erase me from my own life." I felt something settle deep inside me, quiet, heavy, unmovable. Not fear, resolve. The final video ended, and for a moment I sat in silence, listening to the faint hum of the laptop. They thought I was fading, crumbling, losing my grip on reality. They thought they had plenty of time to finish their plan. But the cloud had recorded everything. Their secrets belonged not only to technology, but now to me. I closed the laptop gently, almost tenderly, as if thanking it for telling the truth no one in this house would speak aloud. That night, when the house finally quieted, I walked through each room with purpose. My hands did not shake as I placed the first recorder inside the hollow wooden angel on the mantel. The second slipped behind a framed photograph in the hallway. The third nestled beneath the couch cushion Avery favored. The fourth I hid inside the wicker basket where Luke threw his keys. As I stood in the dim light, hearing the slow tick of the thermostat, I whispered to myself, "If they want to fight in the dark, then I will use the light." And I knew everything was about to change. I waited in my room that night with the lights off, sitting completely still, my hands folded in my lap. The only sound was the soft crackle of the recorder app on my phone as it began to sync the feeds from the 4 devices I had hidden. I did not have to lean close to hear. Their voices came through with a clarity sharper than glass. The first recording opened with Luke's voice low, irritated, impatient with the world and everyone in it. "I opened 2 more accounts under her name today," he muttered. "Smaller transfers so the bank does not flag anything." My stomach turned, but I kept listening as Avery's heels clicked across the garage floor. "Good," she said. "I changed her mailing address to my P.O. box last week. She won't see a single statement until this is over." They said it so casually, as if they were discussing recycling schedules, not the dismantling of my life. Then Luke said something that made my fingertips go cold. "Her signature is almost ready." Almost ready. As if I were a document they were manufacturing. Avery laughed softly, a sound that always reminded me of metal scraping tile. "After the mental test, she won't have any rights left. That doctor barely listens. I will tell him she gets confused, and he'll sign off on the impairment form." I heard the slap of papers being shuffled. Then Avery whispered, "Luke, once she's declared incompetent, we don't even need her signature. We can finish everything in a week." For a moment I felt my pulse in my throat, steady but heavy. They truly believed I was already gone. They believed erasing a person happened one form at a time. Then the recording shifted, Luke pacing, his shoes dragging across the concrete. I heard the faint buzz of his phone before he answered it. "Hey," he said, voice changing instantly into something tender, practiced, almost young. I know. Once the house sells, Marla and I will be free." The garage went silent. Even through the recording, I could feel the air freeze. Avery's footsteps stopped. "What did you just say?" Luke muttered something under his breath. Avery did not let it pass. "Say it again." "I said," Luke exhaled sharply. "Once the house sells, Marla and I." The sound of impact exploded through the speakers. A slap, hard. "You have a mistress?" Avery shrieked. "A mistress and a child? I ruined my credit for you. I helped you steal from your own mother for you. And all this time you were planning to leave me too?" Luke groaned, stumbling back. "Avery, stop, listen." Another slap, then another, rhythmic, furious, escalating, until Luke snapped. "If you hadn't made this house miserable, maybe." A crash cut him off. Something heavy toppled over the tool cart, maybe. "You'd sacrifice your own mother," Avery screamed, "for a woman who doesn't even want you? For your mistress, you'd throw her into a nursing home?" Luke did not deny it. Not once. He just kept saying her name, Marla, like a man begging a lifeline to appear. Avery lost control completely. "You liar! You coward! You used me. You used your own mother. For what? For some cheap woman who calls you daddy? Luke shouted back, panicked. We needed the money. That house is the only asset worth anything. So you steal from the woman who raised you? Avery screamed. You open accounts in her name? Forge her signature? Drug her up so she forgets things? You disgust me. Every word, every slap, every confession, captured clearly by the microphones they did not know existed. The internal structure of their alliance cracked loud enough for the whole world to hear. They had spent months constructing a plan precise enough to erase a lifetime, but they forgot one essential truth. People who use cruelty as a weapon eventually turn it on each other. The recording ended with Avery sobbing and Luke cursing under his breath, the two of them circling each other in the garage like cornered animals. I sat back in my chair. Their plot was complete. Their betrayal is documented. Their unity shattered. I pressed my thumb against the stop button. Thank you, I whispered into the quiet. This is enough evidence. Then I closed my eyes, steady and certain for the first time in months. More than enough. The family meeting was announced the way a threat often is, too calmly to be innocent. Avery knocked once on my door, then pushed it open before I could answer. Downstairs, she said. Now. Her voice held the kind of confidence only people feel when they think the final move of a game is already theirs. Luke was waiting at the dining table with a stack of papers neatly arranged in front of him. He didn't look up when I approached. He didn't offer a seat. He just tapped the papers twice, like a judge calling a courtroom to order. Mom, he said, exhaling as though I were a burden he'd been forced to lift for too long. We need to address your living situation. Avery folded her arms, a pleased curl settling onto her lips. Luke began reading from the paper as though it were holy scripture. Your mind is declining. You're forgetting things. You get confused easily. The safest option for everyone is for you to move into a care facility. He paused, then added, You will be relocated in exactly 30 days. Avery leaned forward. 1 month is honestly generous. I wanted you out this week. I said nothing. It wasn't silence from defeat this time. It was silent from control. Avery took my quiet as an invitation to stab deeper. She circled the table slowly, like a cat toying with something fragile. You know, she said, old people ruin the energy of a home. Everything feels heavy when you walk into a room. Luke nodded, as if this were a medical fact. Avery continued, savoring every word. This Christmas is the last Christmas you'll ever spend here. And honestly? Good. The kids avoid you. They don't need your sadness rubbing off on them. Luke added, Mom, it's better this way. The nurse will help you with everything. His voice softened in a fake kindness he reserved for conversations he wanted to end quickly. Avery smirked. Once you're settled, we'll finally be able to breathe in our own house again. Their cruelty was no longer surprising. But the certainty was almost impressive. They had rehearsed this moment, polished it, dressed it up like a performance. In their minds, this was the victory lap. I folded my hands in my lap. And you both believe this is your decision? Avery laughed. Actually, I laughed. You don't have a decision, May. That's the whole point. You're not capable enough to make decisions anymore. She tapped her temple, mimicking the gesture she used whenever she accused me of being confused. Your elevator doesn't reach the top floor these days, sweetheart. Luke cleared his throat, sliding the final form toward me. The cognitive test is scheduled already. Once the doctor confirms the decline, he'll sign off on the placement, and everything else. There it was. The plan laid bare. The cage, already built. I looked at the paper, but I didn't touch it. Their faces hovered over me, impatient, expecting me to cry, or beg, or crumble. They wanted to see me small. Instead, at that exact moment, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A message. I lifted it slowly, keeping my expression calm. Evelyn March. Living trust finalized. They can no longer access, modify, sell, or control any asset under your name. You're fully protected. I read it twice. Then once more, letting the words settle deep and warm. Avery rolled her eyes. Is that one of your dumb appointment reminders? Give it here. No, I said, slipping the phone back into my pocket. It wasn't the doctor. Luke sighed with dramatic exhaustion. Mom, we're trying to do what's best for you. Why are you making this difficult? Why? Because they believed they were already standing on my grave. Because they believed 30 days was all I had left. Because they believed the version of me they created, weak, confused, fading, was real. For the first time, I felt something unfamiliar rise inside my chest. Not fear, not sadness. Something steadier, something sharper. Power. Avery narrowed her eyes. What are you smiling at? I hadn't realized I was smiling. It wasn't wide, it wasn't mocking, it was simply final. I looked at both of them, slowly, letting the silence stretch long enough that the air itself seemed to lean forward to listen. I'm smiling, I said, because it's fascinating how people can believe they've already won when they don't even know the game ended yesterday. Luke blinked, confused. Avery stepped back, uneasy, and I sat there, steady, unshaken, the truth burning bright behind my ribs. Game over, I whispered. For both of you. Christmas Day arrived wrapped in a cheer so artificial it felt almost cruel. Luke had decorated the house with an enthusiasm I hadn't seen in years. Lights, garlands, candles, everything polished to disguise the rot beneath. Relatives filled the living room, balancing plates of food while making small talk, blissfully unaware that the house they were standing in had nearly become my coffin. Luke clinked his glass with a rehearsed smile. Everyone, he said, lifting the wine, a toast. To freedom, without burdens. His eyes landed on me for a second too long. Avery's smirk stretched as if she were already savoring my exit. I rose slowly, letting the room settle before I walked toward the Christmas tree. Evan watched with a puzzled tilt of his head. Grandma, what are you doing? Just adjusting something, sweetheart, I said. My hand reached for the star, the hollow ceramic ornament that had been listening for weeks. I flicked the tiny switch hidden at its base. A soft click. Then the speakers set up by Avery for holiday music connected automatically. Not music, not carols. Luke's voice, crisp, sharp, recorded with perfect clarity. Once she's in the nursing home, the house is ours. Marla and I can finally start fresh. The room froze so completely I could hear the radiator hum. A cousin dropped his fork. Someone gasped. A second voice followed Avery's, laced with triumph and venom. She'll sign anything once we break her mentally? Murmurs erupted, heads turned, eyes widened. Then more. You changed the mailbox address, right? Yeah. She'll never see another statement again. Good. Keep practicing her signature. The POA needs to look clean. Open more accounts under her name. Spread the transfers. A chair scraped violently behind me. Luke shouted, Mom, turn that off. I didn't move. The next clip rolled on without mercy. Avery, taunting. Old people are useless. No one will believe her. Silence shattered. Relatives stared at her with horror. Chloe clung to my hand, trembling. Then Luke's whisper, desperate, intimate, the kind he reserved for his mistress. I'll sell the house soon, Marla. My mom won't be here much longer. Avery lunged toward the tree, but two of Luke's cousins blocked her path, disgust carved deep into their faces. And then, because fate has a sense of timing, a new file began automatically playing. The cloud backup from Luke's hidden camera, projected onto the TV he had proudly connected for holiday movies. First clip. Avery climbing onto a stool, pushing my medication into the highest cabinet out of reach. Second clip. Luke slapping Avery's son when the boy cried, shouting, Stop defending that old hag. Third clip. Avery pacing the kitchen, whispering to Luke, Just break her mentally, then she'll sign anything. Gasps erupted from every corner of the room. Shock became anger real. Righteous anger. The kind that couldn't be softened by excuses. Aunt Linda pointed an accusing finger. You were abusing her, both of you. Luke grabbed the remote and yelled, Stop the video! This is private! This is illegal! I stepped away from the tree. No, Luke, what you did was illegal. This is simply truth. As if summoned by the word, a hard knock hit the front door. Before anyone could react, two police officers and a woman from the Financial Crimes Division stepped inside. Luke Turner? Avery Turner? The officer announced. You are under arrest for elder fraud, identity theft, coercion, and intentional exploitation." Avery staggered backward. No, you don't understand. We heard everything," the investigator said, lifting a small device. "Your attorney provided verified copies of the recordings." Luke spun toward me, eyes wild. Mom, you set us up." "No," I said quietly. "You set yourselves up, I just pressed play." They cuffed Luke first. Avery screamed at him, "You planned this. I just did what you told me." Luke twisted in his restraints. "Don't lie. You pushed me into it. You told me we needed the house." "You wanted it for your mistress," Avery shrieked. Somewhere between their shouting, a new pair of heels clicked across the threshold. Evelyn March entered the room, calm as winter. In her hand was a thick envelope sealed with an old, faded crest. "Mrs. Turner," she said to me, "it's time." She opened the envelope and read aloud. "This is the last will and testament of William Turner, written 40 years ago. Clause 14. Any heir who mistreats, exploits, or attempts to dispossess my wife, May Turner, shall forfeit all rights to inheritance immediately and permanently." The investigator looked up sharply. "That means the house," Evelyn confirmed, "belongs solely and irrevocably to May. The living trust protected my assets in the present, but this old will from William sealed the past with iron. Together, they formed a wall. No fraud, no forged signature, and no manipulative scheme could ever break through. And per the clause, Luke and Avery must vacate the property within 72 hours. A wave of righteous satisfaction rolled through the room. Someone whispered, "Good." Luke's knees buckled. Avery sobbed hysterically. As they were led toward the door, Luke turned to me with a broken, pleading expression. "Mom, please, say something." I stepped closer, just enough that he could hear me clearly. "Good luck, son," I said softly. "You'll need it where you're going." His face collapsed. The officers pulled him outside into the cold Christmas air, and for the first time in years, the house felt clean. Not because of the lights or the tree, but because the truth had finally spoken. Justice did not arrive in a single thunderclap. It arrived slowly, like frost creeping along window edges, quiet but undeniable. The weeks after Christmas felt suspended in some strange, cold clarity as hearings stacked one after another, evidence layered over more evidence, and the world Luke built through lies finally buckled under its own weight. On the morning of sentencing, I sat in the second row of the courtroom, hands folded, back straight. I did not shake. I did not pray for leniency or vengeance. I simply waited to hear the truth spoken out loud by someone who could not be intimidated, manipulated, or deceived. Luke shuffled in, wearing an orange jumpsuit, wrists bound, eyes hollowed out by fluorescent lights and restless nights. He looked years older, cheeks sunken, shoulders slumped, lips trembling. When he saw me, he blinked rapidly, as if trying to wake from a nightmare he had spent years constructing. Avery sat on the opposite side of the room, separated by court order. Her lawyer whispered urgently into her ear, but she stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, mascara stiff on her lashes from dried tears or denial. The judge read through the charges with a voice that did not rise or soften, a voice that felt carved from stone. Elder abuse, identity theft, mail fraud, financial coercion, conspiracy to obtain power of attorney through deceptive means. Each word landed like a shovel of dirt thrown onto a coffin. Luke stared at his shoes, lips pressed so tightly they turned white. When the judge finally lifted his eyes and spoke the sentence, the room stilled. "For the severity of your actions, the premeditated nature of the fraud, and the emotional and financial harm inflicted upon your mother, this court sentences you, Luke Turner, to 6 to 10 years in state prison." A soft gasp floated through the gallery. Luke's knees buckled. The officer beside him tightened his grip to keep him upright. Luke didn't cry, he simply sagged, as if the last thread holding him together had snapped. The judge turned to Avery next. "Mrs. Avery Dalton Turner, though you did not execute the majority of the financial acts, you participated knowingly in coercion, in the deliberate emotional destabilization of the victim, and in the psychological abuse of minors. Avery's hand flew to her chest. I never. But the judge silenced her with a look. Due to the evidence provided by Child Protective Services, including video documentation showing physical and emotional harm inflicted upon your children, this court finds you unfit for custody at this time. Avery's mouth dropped open in horror. Custody of the children, the judge continued, will be transferred immediately to their great-aunt, Mrs. May Turner, for temporary guardianship pending long-term placement review. Avery crumpled. No. No. You cannot take my children. They're all I have. They're all I have left. But the courtroom door had already opened for the social worker, who held 2 small backpacks, Evans and his little sisters. The reality of that image broke something inside Avery. She did not scream again. She simply folded into herself, shaking silently. It struck me then how cruel tyranny becomes when the power keeping it alive is gone. Without someone to dominate, Avery looked not strong or dangerous but empty. As for Marla, Luke's secret woman, the investigators had tried contacting her during the financial inquiry. She did not respond. Within hours of that first attempt, she terminated her lease, cleared her apartment, wiped her social media, and disappeared with a precision that suggested long practice. She never visited Luke, never wrote to him, never acknowledged knowing him. Worse, one piece of the investigation revealed the truth Luke never expected. The little girl in the photo was not his daughter. Not biologically, not legally. She had simply been leverage, a tool, a way to keep him paying. When the detective revealed it to him during questioning, Luke broke down. A wail ripped out of him, raw, embarrassed, unbelieving. The kind of grief that doesn't come from losing family, but from realizing you were never wanted in the first place. In a single month, he lost his home, his children, his wife's loyalty, his freedom, his imaginary future, and even the lie he had used to justify betraying me. I moved into my small cabin in early spring. The air felt lighter there, untouched by malice. The children visited every weekend. They laughed more, slept better. They stopped flinching at raised voices. One afternoon, the phone rang. The prison facility number blinked on the screen. My heart tightened, but I answered. Mom? Luke's voice was thin, scraped raw. Mom, I'm so sorry. His breath shook. I ruined everything. I ruined my life. I ruined everything you ever gave me. I ruined us. A choked sob cracked through the speaker. I don't know why I became this person. I don't know how. Another breath. Broken. I miss the kids. Avery hates me. Marla never loved me. I have nothing. Mom, please, say something. The wind outside rattled softly along the porch. Luke, I whispered, I raised you to be kind. He cried harder, a soft, defeated sound. And what you became, I said quietly, was your choice. For a long moment he said nothing. Just breathed. Just existed in the truth for the first time in years. Finally, trembling, he whispered, I wish I had been the son you deserved. The line clicked off. I held the silent phone to my chest, feeling neither triumph nor grief, only the stillness that comes when winter finally settles, making room for spring. I moved into Aunt Rose's cabin at the edge of the forest on a soft morning when the mist still clung to the treetops. The world there felt untouched quiet in a way that wasn't threatening, only gentle. Rose greeted me with a long hug that seemed to melt the last remnants of tension still clinging to my shoulders. She didn't ask for explanations or details. She simply said, You're safe now, May. Breathe. And for the first time in what felt like years, I did. Life in the cabin settled around me like a warm quilt. The air smelled of pine and clean earth. The days passed slowly, but not in the way suffering makes time crawl. This was a different kind of slowness, the kind that heals. I learned the rhythm of the woods again, the soft morning rush of birds, the hum of wind through branches, the small tapping of squirrels running across the porch roof. Even the silence was kind. No footsteps waiting to measure my usefulness. No whispers plotting how to erase me. No locked doors. No insults disguised as concern. Just peace. And the sense that I still had years left to live with my own voice, my own choices, my own dignity. Every Saturday afternoon, the cabin door burst open with the sound of laughter, light, bright, and unfiltered. Evan and his little sister ran straight into my arms as though they had been holding their breath all week. "Grandma, Grandma, we missed you?" They always said it the same way, arms tight, faces buried in my shoulder, voices overflowing with relief. Their social worker told me, children surviving chaos gravitate toward the safest person they know. I didn't tell her how much it healed me to realize I was still that person for them. One rainy afternoon, Chloe looked around the cabin, her eyes soft with contentment. "Grandma," she whispered, "we feel safe here." Those 5 words washed over me like warm sunlight. If nothing else good had ever come out of the entire ordeal, that moment would have been enough. Rose adored having them over. She baked with them, taught Evan how to carve little wooden animals, and helped Chloe start her first scrapbook. The cabin filled with their drawings, their songs, their muddy shoes, their excited stories about school. It felt like a home reborn, one built on gentleness rather than survival. One evening, as the sky turned lavender behind the trees, my phone buzzed. A message from Evelyn March glowed on the screen. "Everything is finalized. No one will ever control your life again. Evelyn." I sat down slowly, letting the weight of those words settle inside me. Months of fear, of secrecy, of preparing for a war I never wanted, all of it, ended in that moment. My home was protected. My accounts are secured. My autonomy was restored. My life finally mine again. I typed a short reply. "Thank you, Evelyn, for believing me before anyone else did." After the message was sent, I stepped outside onto the porch. The forest breathed around me. The evening air brushed gently against my face. The world felt wide and steady, like a place that still had room for me, no matter what Luke and Avery had tried to make me believe. I thought about everything they had said over the years, all the ways they tried to convince me I was shrinking, fading, irrelevant. I thought about the words Luke spat at me the morning he told me to pack my bags. I thought about the insults Avery sharpened like knives, the deliberate isolation, the forged papers, the attempt to steal my mind, my home, my very identity. And then I thought about standing in front of 100 relatives on Christmas morning, pressing play on the truth they tried so hard to bury. I wasn't proud of what they became, but I felt no guilt for surviving them. Aunt Rose opened the door behind me. "Tea's ready," she said, her voice warm. "I'll be in," I replied, but I stayed there for a moment longer, staring at the horizon, feeling a kind of strength blooming quietly in my chest, strength I hadn't recognized while living in fear. And then the final truth rose inside me, clear and steady, the way only a woman who has walked through fire can speak it. All my life, they told me my silence made me weak. They said quiet women were easy to control, easy to push aside, easy to erase. But they never understood what lived inside the quiet. Silence never surrenders. Silence was where I watched. Silence was where I learned. Silence was where I gathered every piece of strength they thought I lacked. And when the time came to stand up, my silence became the loudest justice they had ever heard. That is how my story ends, not broken, not lost, not small, but free. Free in a world that finally made room for me. Free with children who chose love over fear. Free with dignity no one will ever steal again. They mistook my silence for weakness. But silence, that was when I was strongest. Thank you, my dears, for listening to my story all the way to the end. Life can be cruel, but it can also be astonishingly fair when truth finally steps into the light. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of the strength quiet people carry, or if it made you believe again that justice still finds its way, then I hope you'll stay with us. There are so many voices like mine, grandmothers, mothers, women who've lived quietly through storms, and they deserve to be heard, remembered, and honored. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to Grandma True Stories. Your support keeps these stories alive, traveling far beyond the walls where they were once silenced. It means more than you know. Until next time, my dear friends, be gentle, be brave, and never underestimate the power of a quiet heart.